G'day reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. Today we're going to talk about the 3 elements of algae control. So there are lots of types of things that we call algae in our tank. Some of these, such as coralline algae, are actually very beneficial. Some of them, such as the Chaetomorpha in the refugium of a lot of reef tanks, is also beneficial at uptaking waste. But what we're talking about today is problem algae. Now there are lots of types of problem algae. For example, green hair algae, which is what we're battling with in this tank, cyanobacteria, which is often called red slime, dinoflagellates, diatomaceous. There's all types of algae that we class as these problem algae. And there's 3 elements to controlling all of these algae. The first is nutrient control. The second is lighting. And the third is manual removal. So let's have a look at these 3 different elements of algae control and how they relate to this tank. So the first element of algae control is nutrient control. Now it's important with your reef tank to ensure that you know what your nutrient levels are. So with all the reef tanks that we look after, we chart the nitrate and the phosphate level. With this tank, we've tested the water today and the nitrate and the phosphate are very high. We've got a nitrate level of 15. With this tank, we would really prefer it to be running significantly lower than that, and 0 to 5 is ideal. And the phosphate level is what some people would consider to be off the chart. It's 1.63. So it is a very high phosphate level, and in this case, the nutrients are definitely contributing to the problem algae in the tank. So let's have a look at some of the things that we can do to decrease the amount of nutrients in the system. So first of all, the skimmer is one of the most important parts of the filtration system, and having a good skimmer makes all the difference, but most importantly, ensuring that your skimmer is tuned so it is most efficiently pulling out the waste. Now there's other parts of the filtration system which are also good to reduce the nitrate and phosphate. Now with this tank, we have a refugium growing Chaetomorpha. One of the things that we're going to look at is what we can do to improve this refugium so that the keto is growing as fast as possible to uptake as much phosphate and nitrate as possible. And one of the things we're going to do is improve the lighting system on this. We're going to put an AI Prime Fuge light on this tank. So on this tank, we have another system for phosphate uptake or control. It's around the other side of the tank. So we have a phosband reactor. Now in this phosband reactor, we have phosband media, which is a type of GFO or granulated ferric oxide. And this absorbs phosphate from the system, and once a fortnight or every 3 weeks or so, we replace the media in here. So this makes a big difference to the phosphate level in the tank. There's something else we do to reduce the phosphate and more so the nitrate in this system, and that's a large water change, and we're going to do that today. One of the most important aspects of nutrient control in your reef system is the input of nutrients. So you have to consider the amount of food going into the tank, be it fish food or coral food, and if you're experiencing a problem with high nutrients and problem algae, one of the first things I would do is consider reducing the amount of food going into the tank or trying to improve the cleanliness of it, so you're not putting in food that's being wasted or polluting the water excessively. But another input of nutrients can potentially be your automatic top up of fresh water into the tank. Now we did previously have a problem with this system whereby our reverse osmosis water filter was putting in high phosphate water into the tank. And since you might remember from a previous video that we actually replaced these cartridges, and since we've done that, we've actually seen a reduction in the phosphate level. So thinking about all the sources of nutrients that are going into your system is particularly important. And with our RO filter, we now know that the TDS, or the total dissolved solids of the RO water going into the tank, is 0. So we can be sure that this is not a source of nutrient input. There are other systems for controlling your nitrate and phosphate, such as carbon dosing, using resins, and other types of absorption media. However, with this tank, our main form of nitrate and phosphate control is more natural, the refugium and the water changing. So let's do the water change, and then we'll look at the second element of algae control. So the second element of algae control is the lighting. Now, a lot of problem algae will certainly develop if you've got excessive lighting, and there's two aspects to the lighting. First of all, the photo period. And the photo period refers to the amount of time that the lights are on. And if you run your lights for a really long photo period, it's almost inevitable that you will have problem algae. The second aspect of the lighting is the spectrum and the color in the lights. With a lot of today's LEDs, we're able to control the spectrum, and typically you'll find that if you have a spectrum which is more blue, you'll have less problem algae. So manipulation of the spectrum and the photo period are two of the things that you can do to help fight algae. And I will often set up what I call a low algae schedule on lights such as radions and hydras, and lights which are easy to control. And these low algae schedules will typically be quite a short photo period, and they'll be very heavy with the blue. And sometimes I will reduce the lighting back to only 6 hours per day and only a low intensity with the blue, just to help fight the algae. Something else you can do with your lighting to really fight problem algae such as cyanobacteria and dinoflagellates is to have a blackout period. And a blackout period is where you would go for maybe 2 or 3 days without having the lights come on at all. The important thing is you need to ensure that you balance a period of time that the blackout goes for with the types of corals that you have. And particularly corals such as SPS, Acropora, Montipora won't handle a long blackout period. But if you've got corals which are quite hardy, corallimorphs, things like that, you might even be able to have a blackout period for up to a week. So that's pretty much it for lighting, but lighting is definitely an important aspect to consider when you're dealing with problem algae. So the third element to algae control is manual removal. Different types of algae require different types of manual removal, and with this green hair algae, we're using the old pinch and pull method. So effectively, I'm siphoning water out of the tank, and I'm using the siphon to actually grab the algae, and I pinch it off, and let it go down the siphon hose. Here's a bit over here, be easy to see. There we go. Now, different types of algae will require different types of manual control. Cyanobacteria is often seen on the substrate, and so in that case I would gravel back the substrate, and that way again you're siphoning out the cyanobacteria. The key is to remove as much of the algae as possible so that you're reducing the amount in the system. Dinoflagellates, as another example, is very easy to sort of waft off with your hand, or even better, a turkey baster, so that you can remove it. It will go into the water column, it will go down into the filter and be removed by the skimmer. But I always try and remove as much of the algae as possible. In combination with nutrient control and the lighting, manual removal is particularly important. So let's just recap the 3 elements to algae control and how we've used them on this tank. So first of all, nutrient control. We've got a strong skimmer that we've tuned so that it's most efficient, as efficient as possible. We've got the Phosban reactor, which is absorbing phosphate out of the system. We've done a water change to dilute the nitrate and phosphate out of the system. And we've also got the refugium with the keto, which we're going to supercharge with a better light in the future to uptake more phosphate and nitrate. The second part, the lighting. Now with this lighting, we're actually not going to manipulate the photoperiod or the spectrum, but that is something that we can look at if we aren't successful with what we've done with the nutrient control. And the third element for algae control in this system is the manual removal. And I've spent quite some time plucking the algae out of this system to get as much out as possible. Now these 3 elements apply to pretty much every type of algae. However, there are 2 other honourable mentions which are more specific to certain types of algae. First of all, herbivores. Now herbivores are important with certain types of algae. Green hair algae in particular is a relatively easy type of algae to fix with the right type of herbivores. And my favourite herbivores for most of these types of algae are abalone, diadema urchins and trochus. The other honourable mention, which is also quite specific to the type of algae that you're treating, are chemical controls. And the classic example is for Bryopsis. With Bryopsis, whilst I would still use the 3 main elements to really reduce the growth rate, fluconazole is an excellent chemical treatment that is very effective at curing that specific type of algae. As well as cyanobacteria has a variety of readily available commercial treatments, as does dinoflagellates. So you can use chemical treatments, but for the vast majority of algae, the 3 main elements are nutrient control, lighting and manual removal. So that's it for our video today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about algae control, and we'll come back and have a look at this tank in a few weeks and see how it's going. So I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing! So that's our video for today. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe as well. We'll be putting out videos every week showing a new tank with new products. There's going to be lots in all the videos. I'm Cam the Fish Guy, and keep on reefing.